They say destiny is cruel, but that night, when I stood in the rain, watching the man I once called my everything slip a ring onto my sister's finger, I felt my soul shatter into pieces. My heart whispered questions the sky could never answer. Why him, why her, and why me? The past and present tangled inside me like a storm, because only I knew, this wasn't the first time I had lived this pain before. I was reborn into the same life, but this time, fate had rewritten my path, in ways I never expected. Welcome to the Untold Love. If this story touches your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more unforgettable tales of love and destiny. They say the beginning of love always feels like a dream, soft, unreal, yet so deeply alive. For me, it started quietly, almost like a song I didn't know I had been waiting to hear. His name was Albert, and from the very first moment, he carried an aura of safety. Not the kind of safety that comes from walls or promises, but the kind that lives in a single smile, in the warmth of someone's presence. I was only 25 then, hopeful, perhaps a little naive, but my heart believed in forever. Albert was 28, with a laugh that could turn the darkest day into gold. He wasn't perfect, not in the way stories often describe. He wasn't the richest man, nor the most flawless. But he had a way of looking at me as though the world had narrowed down to just one person, and that was enough. With him, silence never felt empty, it felt like home. But life is never lived alone, and my story also had another name, my sister, Julie. She was younger than me by 2 years, graceful in ways I was not, admired wherever she went. Where I was soft-spoken and reserved, she was lively, always shining. In the crowd, people often compared us, and I'll admit, sometimes it stung. But she was my sister, my own blood, so I swallowed those quiet insecurities, believing love could never draw lines between us. At first, it was beautiful. The three of us shared moments of laughter and light. I can still remember evenings when Albert and I walked side by side, while Julie teased us from behind, her laughter echoing in the air. I never imagined those echoes would one day drown my own voice. Albert and I built dreams together. Simple dreams. A small home with sunlight pouring in through wide windows. Children who would inherit his smile, his patience, his strength. We whispered about the future as though it was ours to claim, untouchable, eternal. Looking back now, I realize how fragile innocence truly is. Love felt like the strongest force in the world, and yet, it was already under trial. The seeds of change were being sown quietly in the background, in glances I didn't notice, in silences I didn't question. At that time, though, I only saw him, the man who held my heart as though it was the most precious thing he had ever touched. Before the storm came, there was peace. And in that peace, I lived fully, never imagining that destiny had already chosen another path for us. Every love story has a moment where the laughter fades, where the promises begin to sound like echoes instead of truths. For me, it happened so quietly that I didn't even realize when the cracks first appeared. One day, Albert's smile didn't linger as long. His words felt heavier, less warm, as though his heart had wandered somewhere far from me. At first, I told myself it was nothing. Life has its pressures, work has its weight, I believed that. I wanted to believe that. But slowly, I began to notice something else. The way his eyes followed Julie when she entered the room. The way her laughter seemed to spark something in him, a brightness I had once thought belonged only to me. It was like being invisible in my own love story. I would sit beside him, yet feel miles away. His silence grew, and in that silence, my heart learned the language of fear. Fear that the man who once held me so close was slipping through my fingers. One heartbeat at a time. And then came the moment I had prayed would never arrive. The truth revealed itself not with words, but with actions too loud to ignore. A hand brushed too tenderly against hers. A glance that carried weight. And one evening, when I found them together, laughing in a way that once was ours, my soul cracked. I confronted him, trembling, searching for denial, for a reason to believe. It was all in my head. But instead, I heard the words that silenced me forever, "I think I love your sister." The world stopped. My chest burned as though my very breath had betrayed me. How could love turn so cruel? How could destiny take my forever and place it in the hands of the one person I trusted most? Days turned into nights, nights into an endless ache. I watched as he chose her, as the love that once filled my life now belonged to someone else. Julie stood there too, unashamed, her eyes holding no apology. Perhaps she never saw me as her rival, only as the obstacle to what she wanted. And me? I faded. Piece by piece, I crumbled until there was nothing left but a hollow shell. My life ended not with death, but with abandonment. I carried the weight of betrayal until my final breath in that first life. I thought that was the end of my story. But fate had something else in store. Because death was not the end, it was only the beginning. When I closed my eyes in that first life, I thought I had reached the end. The pain of betrayal was my last memory, the man I loved slipping away, the sister I trusted standing in his arms. I had carried that grief into my final breath, certain that nothing could rewrite what had already been broken. But destiny had other plans. When my eyes opened again, the world was strangely familiar. The light in the room, the sound of morning birds outside, even the scent of fresh jasmine, it was as if I had stepped backward in time. My hands trembled as I looked around. The calendar on the wall told me what my heart refused to believe: I was back. Back in the days before it all went wrong. At first, I thought it was a dream, a cruel trick of the mind. But as the hours passed, I realized the truth: I had been given another chance. Life had circled me back, returning me to the moment where everything had once begun to fall apart. Shock turned into disbelief, and disbelief slowly turned into determination. In my first life, I had been blind, too trusting, too soft. This time, I swore it would be different. I would not hand my heart over so easily. I would not allow my sister's smile to become the blade that cut me again. When I looked at Albert now, I saw not only the man I had loved, but the man who had broken me. His warmth still stirred my soul, yes, but I also carried the memory of his betrayal like a shadow that never left. Every smile he gave me, every gentle word, I questioned it, weighed it against what I knew was coming. And when I looked at Julie, I saw her differently too. Beneath her charm, beneath the grace that made others adore her, I noticed the flicker of envy in her eyes. The little games she played, the manipulations I had once brushed aside as harmless. This time, I was no longer blind. It wasn't easy. My heart ached with every choice I made, torn between the love I still felt and the wisdom my rebirth had gifted me. But deep inside, a quiet voice told me this chance was not given to me in vain. I was meant to change something. I was meant to rewrite my destiny. And so, with trembling steps, I prepared myself, not just to survive the storm I knew was coming, but to face it with eyes wide open. Love is not always stolen in a single moment. Sometimes, it is tested, pulled apart thread by thread until you no longer recognize the fabric you once wrapped yourself in. After my rebirth, I carried every memory of heartbreak, and yet, my heart betrayed me. It still longed for Albert. I tried to create distance, to step away before the past repeated itself. I answered his calls less, I avoided the softness of his gaze, I built walls where once there had only been doors. But in that distance, something unexpected happened. Albert began to notice. For the first time, it was not me chasing him, it was him searching for me. He looked for me in crowded rooms, his voice carried a new weight when he spoke my name. The absence I created pulled him closer, as if fate itself had turned the tables. But my sister, Julie, was not blind. She saw the shift, the invisible thread between us that still glowed despite everything. Her smile grew sharper, her charm more deliberate. Where I stepped back, she stepped forward, her laughter louder, her presence brighter. And Albert, caught between the comfort of my silence and the fire of her persistence, began to waver. One evening, I found myself face to face with her. There were no gentle words between us, no sisterly warmth. Her voice carried steel when she whispered, "You had him once. But this time, I won't let go. He will be mine." Those words cut deeper than any blade. I wanted to scream, to tell her that love was not a prize to be stolen. But instead, I stood there in silence, knowing anger would not change the course of destiny. And then, as if fate was mocking me, the past repeated itself. Albert, confused and restless, proposed to Julie. The sight of that ring sliding onto her finger was like déjà vu, a cruel replay of the life I thought I had escaped. I broke inside, though no tears fell this time. My rebirth had given me strength, but it had not erased the pain. Watching them together was a storm I had already weathered once, yet it still tore through me like the first time. But deep within, I knew something had shifted. Destiny was not finished. Albert's choice might have mirrored the past, but his eyes told another story. A story still tethered to me, even as he stood by her side. And so, the test began, not just of love, but of fate itself. They were preparing for a wedding. A wedding that should have been mine in another life, yet here I was, standing on the outside, watching it all unfold again. The house echoed with laughter, the clinking of bangles, the rustle of silk saris. Everyone celebrated, but to me, every sound felt like a reminder of how cruel destiny could be. Albert smiled, yes, but his smile was different now. It was practiced. Strained, as if painted on his face. I watched him from afar, and in fleeting moments, his eyes searched the crowd, searched for me. He may have been engaged to Julie, but something in his heart refused to let go. I, too, carried a storm within. My love for him had not died, but neither had the memories of betrayal. I told myself this time I would not fight, I would not beg. Let fate show its hand. If he was truly mine, destiny itself would find a way to bring him back. Julie, on the other hand, basked in her victory. She paraded her ring with pride, her smile wide, her voice filled with triumph. Yet beneath that glitter, I saw cracks she could not hide from me. She demanded his attention more often than he offered it. She sought assurance while his eyes remained distant. Days passed, and slowly, the truth began to reveal itself. Albert was restless. He would sit in silence, staring at nothing, as if haunted by something he couldn't name. At gatherings, when everyone laughed, his gaze would drift toward me for just a second too long. It was enough to ignite the ache in my chest, and enough to fuel Julie's jealousy. I remember one evening vividly. The house was lit with lamps. Filled with chatter, yet I felt strangely alone. Across the room, our eyes met. For a heartbeat, the world disappeared. In his eyes, I saw regret, longing, an unspoken confession that words could never carry. And in mine, perhaps he saw the love I still tried to hide. But I turned away. Because this was not the time to speak. Destiny was weaving something larger. Something I could not yet see. And so, I waited. Quietly, painfully, patiently, I waited. For the truth to rise, for the lies to crumble, for fate to finally decide if love was meant to end in betrayal once more, or if this time, destiny had written a different ending for us. The day of truth arrived like a storm, sudden, fierce, and impossible to ignore. What had been hidden behind smiles and ceremonies finally tore its mask away. Julie's perfect facade cracked, and the world saw what I had known deep inside. Her love was not love at all, but possession, hunger, a desire to win even at the cost of others' pain. It began with whispers, rumors of her selfishness, of the way she spoke harshly when no one was watching, of the mask she wore so carefully. And then, one evening, it was Albert himself who caught her in a moment she could not deny. Words sharp with cruelty fell from her lips, directed not at him, but at someone who served her. He stood there, frozen, as the image of the woman he thought he loved shattered before his eyes. The truth was undeniable. His world collapsed, but in that collapse, he finally saw clearly. His heart, restless for weeks, now knew why. It had never belonged to her. It had always been mine. He came to me, broken, desperate, searching for forgiveness in the ashes of what he had lost. I still remember the trembling in his voice when he said, "I was blind. I chose wrong. I hurt you in ways you didn't deserve. But if you still have even a fragment of love left for me, let me make it right." His words pierced me. My soul ached, torn between the memory of his betrayal and the truth glowing in his eyes now. For a long moment, I said nothing. And then, with a deep breath, I told him softly, "Fate gave me 2 lives to learn one lesson, that love cannot be forced, and it cannot be stolen. If we are standing here again, after all that has been broken, perhaps it is because destiny never let go of us." Tears filled his eyes as he held my hands, not as a possession, not as a man desperate to claim, but as someone who finally understood the weight of love. In that moment, I felt the circle of pain close, and the circle of healing begin. Destiny had tested us, torn us apart, and written our suffering across 2 lives. But in the end, it had also brought us back together, not as the naive lovers we once were, but as souls who had walked through fire and still found each other on the other side. And this time, I knew, love was ours to keep. Some stories are meant to break us before they make us whole. Mine was one of them. I had lived through betrayal, through loss, through the silence of a love stolen by my own blood. I had watched my world collapse not once, but twice. And yet, here I was, standing in the same world again, only this time, it felt different. When Albert held my hands with trembling honesty, I saw not just the man who had hurt me, but the man who had grown through pain, just as I had. We were not who we once were. I was no longer the fragile girl who believed love was unbreakable, and he was no longer the man who mistook desire for destiny. We were changed, marked by fire, yet alive because of it. Forgiving him wasn't easy. Forgiving my sister was harder still. But in that forgiveness, I found freedom. Carrying bitterness would only chain me to the past, and I had already been there once. This time, I chose differently. I chose peace. Destiny had shown me something I could never have understood otherwise, that real love is not about possession. Nor about promises spoken in youth. Real love is about returning, again and again, to the one heart that feels like home, even when storms try to pull it away. Albert and I did not rush back into the old dream. Instead, we rebuilt it slowly. Brick by brick, with trust at its foundation. There were scars between us, yes, but scars are not signs of weakness, they are reminders of survival. And together, we chose to survive. As for Julie, her path drifted away from ours. Perhaps life had its own lessons waiting for her, just as it had for us. I no longer looked at her with anger. Instead, I prayed she would one day discover a love that was hers to keep, without needing to steal it from another. Now, when I look back, I no longer see only the pain. I see the journey. I see the way destiny tested us, broke us, and then pieced us back together in a way that was stronger, deeper, unshakable. Because in the end, love was not lost. It was waiting. Waiting for the right time, the right understanding, the right souls. And when that moment finally came, no force in this world could keep us apart. This is the truth I carry now, real love never fades, it only waits for its moment. And when destiny decides, it always finds its way home.